In this lesson, we're going to learn how to import and combine all of our various image layers into a single Nuke script. So I've just opened up a new Nuke script here by going to File, New, and I'm going to assume for this course that you understand the basics of working with Nuke, so you know how to move around as well as add nodes and connect them. And if you don't, or if you're new to Nuke and want to have a quick jump start, feel free to check out our Beginner's Guide to Nuke as well as our Getting Started with Nuke. And during the course, if you have any trouble with tracking or rotoscoping, we'll be suggesting various courses that you can use to get up to speed in those various practices. Okay, so now let's import our color passes and our footage. So I'm just going to Control select both of these folders here and drag them into my node graph. Now we have a little system folder here that we don't need, so we can just delete that. And of course, you can get to this or import by hitting the R key to add in a read node. All right, so let's just break these apart so we can see them a little easier. I'm just going to put them in a row on top. And right now, you'll notice they all have the green layer channel or the layer box here, which says that they are in a layer that Nuke, well, it's not one of the normal layers. It's not an RGB layer. So let's hit the 1 key to drop in a viewer here so we can see these. Again, the RGB will be empty, so let's go to our AO shadows. And so each of these has the specific layer name that we created. Now, I believe the spider glow is actually empty, so we can delete that layer just so we don't have to worry about it. So now we could, of course, begin combining these together with merges, but for the fastest workflow, I really prefer combining all of my layers into a single tree so I have access to every single layer at the same time. And this is really the power of Nuke, is using multiple channels and channel layers together really at any point in the composition. So to combine these, we're going to need to copy these layers together. So to do that, we can add in a copy node. Now normally, we would need to use something like a shuffle copy, but because we already set up our node network before, we can simply use a copy node. And we'll see why here in a second. So plug the A into one of them and then the B into the other. In our case, we're not going to worry about that, but if we view this, you can see we're getting an error. And that's because it's trying to copy an alpha channel that obviously doesn't exist. So let's change our copy node from copy channel to a layer copy, and let's just set this to all. Now, normally, this would cause us problems because normally our channels or our layer sets are all in the RGBA layer set. So when we copy them, we would simply be overwriting each of these color channels. However, if you'll recall in the last lesson, we shuffled these into their own unique layer names. For example, the spider diffuse. So as we copy these, we are no longer overwriting them because each layer name has a unique name. Again, if they were RGB, we'd need to use shuffle copies. However, since we shuffle copied in the last lesson, all we need to do is Control-C, Control-V, and paste these in. And finally, just plug them into the new images we need to import. And by the end, we can see all of our layers. Now again, normally we would need to use shuffle copy, and this is probably the third time I've said that because again, we had quite a bit of setup inside of Nuke before this lesson, again using shuffle copies. Okay, so now at the end of our chain we can see everything, and let's just double check that because the worst thing that can happen is we copy something incorrectly and don't notice it until the end of our composite and until we've added in 50 nodes that we have to go find where it broke. So let's see, we don't have anything in RGBA. We have ambient occlusion shadows. We have our motion depth matte. We have our diffuse. Let's see, we have our indirect. And let's look at this at a later. All right, we have our reflection and we have our incandescence. Okay, so it looks like we have everything available to us. Now before we go, let's set up our project correctly. So let's hit S while our mouse is on our node graph, and that'll bring up our project settings. So our frame range is currently correct, our FPS is correct. However, our full-size format is set to something, well, strange. So let's set this to the output format or the working format that we would like. Now, of course, if we were using or if we were working in something like 2K Film or HD video, we would use one of these full-sized formats. However, for this tutorial's purpose, we've included a half HD format or half HD images, both so you can work faster along with this tutorial and so you don't have to download 3 gigs of images. So let's just create a new full-size format. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here and click New. And let's call this half HD, because that's what it is. And so we're going to do 1920 divided by 2 and 1080 divided by 2. And again, if we were delivering this to HD, we would want to work at full res. However, since we're just going through a tutorial, we'll work smaller and faster. And since I actually just created this previously, I'm just going to jump down and click on that half HD. Okay, so now we've got our project settings set up correctly, so I'm going to close this. And let's just clear out our properties bin. Now you'll notice our images are still at an incorrect size because when we imported these, or when we rendered these, we rendered them at a slightly strange pixel aspect ratio, something like 0.996. But we can easily fix that later on using a variety of methods. For now, let's get our beginning composite set up so that we can begin seeing what this is going to look like over our background and begin making some artistic decisions. So in the next lesson, we'll take a look at how we can merge these together to recreate our beauty pass here inside of Nuke. Now before I go, I'm just going to save this script out into our Nuke script so that you'll have access to this if you ever want to follow along. Alright, so in this lesson we simply copied together all of our channel layers, and now we're ready to begin compositing.